Hey all, it's Princess A, and I've got my Ian Need for Speed team to walk through today. It's a Shank variation that's totally doable with rocks still up, which is great since we're tackling 3 Titans at one time now. Because of Shank's passive ability to impact speed meter so effectively, there's really only 1 or 2 reasons you'd need to forfeit, and I actually caught one while I was recording, so instead of editing it out, I kept it in so you could see why it's an automatic forfeit. You're going to see that Chunk goes first to land Fear, and he extends that while taunting. After which, Wendy's going to go ahead and spawn our first shadow. Now, the problem comes up with where the shadow spawns. It would be completely vulnerable here as lava will always be attacking Chunk. So this is our forfeit scenario. The good thing is you know within 30 seconds of the run, so you're not wasting a lot of your time only to have to forfeit anyway. So the reason I named this variant the Need for Speed team is not only the haste that Shank gives, but also because the speed that Chunk and Wendy have is key to starting the run. I do have both of those characters upgraded with tier 9 speed pieces, even though overall they're just tier 8. So this time, Chunk is going to go ahead, land that Fear, extend that Fear while he's taunting. And Wendy is going to spawn that shadow in the center of the board this time. So it's totally safe from Lava's first attack on Chunk. On Shank's first turn, you're going to see that she lands slow with her basic, which does affect the turn meter. And it's really her passive that makes this team magic, as you're going to see. Sally's only job is to land continuous damage, and Chunk is really just alternating between his 2 attacks. With Ian, you're going to wait to use his first special. You don't want to use that first, you're just using his basic. So now that you have your first shadow, Wendy is only going to be doing her basic, which then calls the shadow to assist. And at this point, you're really just trying to stack as much continuous damage as possible to really increase the possible damage total. With the sheer volume that you're putting up on the board, even without an ideal trigger, you're looking at a 2+ million hit. For Shank's second turn, you're granting haste to Wendy so that she can produce as many shadows as possible. And Chunk is now back to taunting, so all of our key players are left undamaged as we continue to just stack more and more damage. You can see Sally is just doing her basic. You do see that original Sally puts out more damage than the shadow, which is why we want as many shadows as possible. Wendy again calls those shadows to assist. And then that shadow, remember, is getting 2 turns on each because Fear is up on the board. So now we're ready at this point to extend all of those harmful effects with Ian's first special. So now Fear is up on the board. And Lava's first turn is going to go after only Chunk because he's got that taunt up. And we're now ready for another really long stretch before his second attack. From here on out, it's pretty much a rinse and repeat of what we've already seen so far. Shank is going to impact turn meter. She can reduce it by 30%, or she can inflict slow, and then she grants haste. Chunk is going to taunt whenever possible. Wendy is either going to shadow or call to assist. The big thing here is make sure you shadow the shadow. You never want the original Sally shadowed again because you actually want to minimize the damage put up on the Titan to make sure that it doesn't empower too quickly. You see Shank again is just doing her basic, going back and forth. Chunk is just going back and forth between those. And then Sally is only going to be doing her basic, stacking all of that continuous damage up as much as possible. And then when we go back to Ian, he's really just doing his basic until the very end. You're going to know when it's time to pull the trigger based on the abilities that are available to Ian. Do not be tempted to pull that trigger too early. There's a specific point that you're going to know, okay, now it's time to set up the trigger. You can go ahead and start to pay attention to the turn meter whenever Shank does her basic. It doesn't happen every time because she is inflicting slow. It's the possibility to inflict slow or to reduce that turn meter by 30%. But it just so happens that with the way it works out, you will always have Chunk taunting to make sure the damage goes his way. It's very rare that your turn meter won't work out that way. And if it doesn't, you may have a forfeit possibility, but I would say 8 out of 10 times, it's going to work out in your favor. So for example, right now, he is not taunting and he just had his turn. So you might be getting worried, but watch what happens with Shank. She just does her basic. It's going to affect that turn meter now. So Chunk is going to get another go at this. So now we're about 2/3 of the way through the run. And we're really setting it up that Lava has not gotten a second turn yet. You're just able to continually stack all of that damage. You see Chunk's turn is coming up, so he will get a chance to taunt again before Lava gets that second turn. Basic from Ian. Chunk is now taunting. Puts a little bit more damage up on him. And now you've got those sallies. You'll even see after Shank has her next turn, you're going to get even more chances to get more continuous damage up. It's going to affect it again. So we've got that basic. Wendy is going to get to do one more shadow. Now, the one thing with this run that did not go well is where this shadow spawns. But this is not a forfeit situation because you already have so much damage up on the board. It is not going to matter that this next turn, that shadow is going to die. So we're going to live with 2 shadows and original Sally instead of 3. Now, there are going to be situations where you could have 3 to 4 shadows, which is where those higher numbers start to come up. This is Lava's second turn. And you can see he's only going after Chunk, but that shadow does die. We're still in that rinse and repeat. So let's go ahead and start talking about the trigger setup. When you see Ian's first special, the Magnora Gantuan, you know it's time to set up the trigger. This special grants Ian a random helpful effect for 2 turns. Now what you're hoping for is that he grants himself critical power up. But even if you don't get that, you have stacked so much damage with this setup that even a less than ideal trigger is still going to get you 2+ million. So even if you don't get the perfect setup, don't just forfeit. You're still going to get a 2 to 3 million run. Now, if you're lucky, you're looking at a 4 to 5 million hit. Now, I get really lucky with this run. I don't know why it happened that the one that I decided to record worked out, but I'm not going to complain about that at all. Shank is still just doing her basic. Chunk is not going to be taunting again, but we're not going to worry about it because that turn meter is going to be in our favor eventually. We've got Sally doing her thing. Basic, 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 basic. Now you can see that my spells actually pop up. Most of the time with this team, they don't actually trigger. We had enough damage done to Chunk that they did trigger on this go around. All right, it's almost time to set up the trigger. So you're going to have Ian. He's going to go ahead and do his first special. And as you see, we get extraordinarily lucky right there. He does grant himself the critical power up. So now what we're trying to do is we're just trying to get to Ian's next turn. Wendy is finally going to give Ian offense up with her last special. That's the only time Wendy is going to do that attack, and it's just to give Ian that offense up to even give us a little bit more of a boost. We've got Chunk taunting again, so we are definitely going to be okay, even if Lava did take another turn. But as you're going to see, because of the magic of this team, Shank is going to affect that turn meter again, give us more chances to get continuous damage up on the board before Ian gets to pull that trigger. So Lava's not even going to get another turn. You're talking Lava only had 2 turns this entire run before Ian is going to pull that trigger. We're just going to get in a few more stacks of continuous damage. Wendy has the possibility here to shadow again, but it's not worth it. The damage is more beneficial to us than another shadow at this point, so she calls to assist. 1 more shadow, 1 and then 2. And now we're finally going to detonate that trigger. He's going to pull it, and you're going to get to see it's a 4 million hit just from that one. Now at this point, everybody's going to die. We're fine with that. We don't need any more damage. We got the big hit that we were looking to. Now, normally I would run this at 2 times speed, but I ran it this time at 1 time speed just so I could give you a detailed rundown. But when it's run at 2 times speed, you're really talking about a 4.5 minute run with the low end of a 2 million payout and the possibility of 4 to 5 million damage number at the higher end. So this one, we're going to see the final damage total in like 3 seconds. It ended up at 4.2 million. And most of that damage all came from that big hit. Let me know if you have any comments or questions. I'd love to help us all get this really easy, free to play, friendly Ian team. It's not that bad to farm up. We have most of these characters, and it's a great alternative to the Wendy variant because it doesn't require 2 summoners chosen to make it work. So you don't lose that other team that you all have worked so hard to get. Thanks for watching, guys. Let me know if you have any questions. Bye.